Vegas, taking over for the Raiders as their head coach. He had this to say about the quarterback position.
It's our mission to build this football team up around the quarterback position. This isn't the only spot. We happen to have the greatest of all time to help us and to see clearly, and we're going to lean on Tom as much as we possibly can for his insights, because nobody has the insights that he has. He's that unique. But it's the quarterback position is one of the positions on the team, and we've got to make it all fit together well.
Yeah, I mean, Tom Brady is certainly in the mix with all that decision making. Graz, what have you heard about Vegas, what they plan to do at quarterback?
Well, I don't think Tom can play, so that's one guy that you can probably cross off the list. I think he's done. It's like Pittsburgh and the Jets, right? They're sort of in the early stages of the evaluation of what's going to be available to them and what they're going to be able to do. You know, Russell Wilson is a free agent. He has some history with Pete Carroll. I've been told that they've sort of mended whatever fences need to be mended, so maybe he's an option if they're looking for a short-term fix. They know they need a long-term fix at the position, but sometimes that can be easier said than done. But I'm sure you'll see them poke around on the possibility of signing a Sam Darnold or trading for Kirk Cousins, just like all these other quarterback-needy teams. And then, of course, they'll scout the draft and see if they can get somebody there who can be a more permanent solution. But just like I feel like a broken record, a lot of these teams, they're just beginning the process of what's going to be available to us and what makes sense for us.
All right, Dan, what should the plan be at quarterback for Carroll and company?
I think the first call I would make would be to Matthew Stafford and Los Angeles Rams to figure out what Stafford's plans are. Is he going to play? Is he going to retire? Do they want him back? Honestly, if I were the Giants, if I were the Steelers, if I were a lot of teams, that would be my number one call. Raiders, try to see kind of what the plan is for Matthew Stafford. Number two, I'd call the Seahawks and see what their plan is with Geno Smith. I believe he's going into the last year of his contract. Do they want him long-term there? Does Seattle want to restart at the position? Obviously, Pete Carroll and Geno Smith have the history. And then if not, I do think you got to get into that second tier of this year's draft class. Jalen Milroe, Quinn Ewers, Kyle McCord out of Syracuse is somebody that I think can rise up draft boards. The Ohio State product who transfers over to Syracuse and plays phenomenal football. Will Howard out of Ohio State. But I think McCord is somebody that's going to make a lot of noise in that second round of the draft.
And you know, Pete Carroll has had success with getting quarterbacks around that time. Russell Wilson, obviously a third rounder. Geno Smith goes in there, and we look at him completely different before he got there. But the more important thing for me, for Pete Carroll, and even why he was an enticing candidate for the Vegas Raiders, is because he's a culture builder. And when you saw him in the press conference, you got that feel. That's what he offered to the Seahawks. That's what he did at USC. And him, more than any other coaches that I saw in their press conference, it made you feel like they were in that direction. Yeah. Because he's the kind of guy that's going to go in there. Exactly. He's not going to be like, this is my system, this is what we do. No, he's going to see what the situation calls for, see what the organization needs, and give them stability in a way that they haven't had it.
The presence was so apparent. It did. Exactly. It felt like, to me, that the Raiders kind of won the head coaching hiring cycle.
You need that in that division, though. Andy Reid, Sean Payton, Jim Harbaugh, you need somebody that can go toe-to-toe with them.
All right, we'll see. Still to come, to figure out what went wrong for the losing teams this past weekend. We'll start with the Commanders. Dan, why did their season come to an end Sunday?
They couldn't cover.
Yeah.
they had to make a choice. Obviously, they tried to stop the run. Saquon hits the big run early, and then they said, well, we have to figure out a way to get another person down to the football because Philadelphia had such control of the game early on, and they just could not cover. Now, taller task than I'm making it out to be, because Philadelphia has plenty of people that you got to cover: Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown, Dallas Goedert. But in the reality, defensively, they could not make Philadelphia one-dimensional. On top of that, turnovers were a huge part, but they couldn't make Philadelphia one-dimensional.
Feels like something that is fixable for next season, though, for sure.
With another human or two.
Yeah, right? Add the right people. The Commanders allowed at least 10 passes of 10-plus yards in 5 straight games to end the season. Let's spin this ahead to next season as we do dive into the Commanders' offseason outlook. The Commanders currently have the 3rd most cap space in the NFL when it comes to adding bodies. That helps. They'll have the 29th pick in this year's draft. Graz, what are the biggest offseason questions in your mind in Washington?
Yeah, defense, just like Dan was talking about, especially on the back end. At the trade deadline, they brought in Marshawn Lattimore. Obviously, that didn't work out. He had injury issues and obviously had a very rough game on Sunday. So they'll look to improve and add at cornerback. And then you saw that list of the veteran free agents they brought in, the Bobby Wagners, the Zach Ertz, guys they brought in on one-year deals. They'll have to make some decisions on that. Jeremy Chin, the safety that played well for them, he's a free agent. So, and then that's the back end of the defense. Up front, they really struggled to stop the run all year. So I would expect Washington to devote a significant portion of its offseason resources to fixing the defense.
Yeah, they're not going to surprise anyone next season, that's for sure, but still worth commending the way that they were able to get where they got this year. What do you think, Hawk, the Commanders should prioritize first this offseason?
I mean, besides what Dan and Gross have talked about defensively, it's wide receiver. I would love to see T. Higgins in this Washington offense with Jaden Daniels, because if I'm T. Higgins and I'm testing the waters, like, yeah, I want to get paid, but I also want a quarterback that can get me the rock and I can continue the trajectory that I've started in my career. You can imagine him on opposite sides of Terry McLaurin, that option down the field for Jaden Daniels in year 2 when it gets way harder for quarterbacks. I don't care how good you are. Yeah. That second year gets really tough because defenses, they're keying in on you and your tendencies and what you like to do and what you're comfortable being. With T. Higgins on the outside, that could help mitigate a lot.
Okay, so obviously the money's going to play a part in that. They're going to have to re-sign Jamar in Cincinnati and T to try to keep them both there. We probably think that's unlikely. Do you think that there is an element for T. Higgins where he wants to go be his own guy? You know, you will always be in Jamar's shadow in Cincinnati. And not to say you wouldn't be a little bit in Terry's shadow, because he's been tremendous, but it feels like he can become the 1B to Terry McLaurin more than he'll be with Jamar.
I don't know T. Higgins personally, but in his career, he has not struck me as that kind of player.
And you wouldn't worry about leaving Joe Burrow?
I wouldn't worry about it. If you're going to Jaden Daniels from a Joe Burrow and the money is $5 to $10 more than you'll make somewhere, it's a business as well, right? And you don't want your football to drop off. But Jaden Daniels, he gives you that, not the same ability as Joe Burrow yet, but we've all seen.
You're not taking a big step back.
You're not taking a big step back. You will still be your guy.
That's going to be fascinating to watch. Let's talk about the Bills. Their Super Bowl hopes came crashing down Sunday night yet again because of the Chiefs. Hawk, what went wrong for Buffalo in that one?
I felt like their offense was unimaginative. I felt like they did a lot of short dink and dunk screens, which are great, but they needed to push the ball down the field, I felt like at times. When you're going against Patrick Mahomes and you make it a one-possession game, you're not going to win the football game. Like, history has shown you that in the playoffs in his career, and I felt like they needed more opportunities to push the ball, be more creative in the pass game. It just felt like a masterclass when you watched Andy Reid and the way that he ran his offense versus Joe Brady and the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, to your point about the one-possession games, the Chiefs have won 17 straight one-score games, so they just don't lose those games often. All right, this offseason, the Bills need to clear nearly $11 million to reach the 2020 salary cap. Plus, they have some key players who become free agents. You're seeing some of them there. Graz, what are the biggest offseason questions in Buffalo?
They do have some big questions on the defensive side of the ball. Von Miller is under contract for a few more years, but he's a candidate at his age and his salary to possibly be released. None of his money next season is guaranteed. So whether they do that or not, they'll be looking for edge rush help. And obviously, if they let him go, they'll be looking for even more. And then Rasul Douglas, cornerback they traded for in the middle of last season, has been a good player for them. They have to figure out what they're doing in terms of bringing him back. If they don't bring him back, they'll obviously need another corner. And to Hawk's point about wide receiver, it'll be interesting to see what they do. They were very happy this year about tying an NFL record for most different guys catching touchdown passes in a season. They kind of liked that sort of no-name offense they were running. So I'm curious to see if they'll go back to that number one receiver model, try to sign one of those big guys, or work more with the Keon Coleman's, Khalil Shakir's, guys that they liked this season.
Reading that graphic with the two receivers, I think I would prefer Mac Hollins over Amari Cooper.
The way that he played this season?
In the way that he's complete for their offense.
What do you think, Peacock?
To Graz and your point, they've had success with the wide receiver by committee.
The way that he blocks for their offense is such a big deal.
But I don't know if I'm going to sit here and say Mac Hollins is my number two, just to be honest. And again, Keon Coleman has taken strides. Shakir obviously is like the main guy, even though he plays the slot, and he's very versatile in that way. Even with a receiver by committee approach, they're missing roles. They need a big play guy, deep threat.
Yeah.
Josh Allen has a rocket arm. You don't see those highlights as routinely as you should of him heaving the ball 50, 60 yards down the field and a guy catching underneath it and scoring a touchdown.
Yeah.
They need that in this offense. Otherwise, they're going to be hamstrung like they were in the AFC Championship.
I wonder if Cooper had more time, maybe he could get to know the offense a little better. What else do they need to do?
I agree. They need a difference maker on offense, a perimeter player that's a difference maker. I think they need to add two pieces to their back end that are game changers. Baltimore has Marlon Humphrey and a Kyle Hamilton. Kansas City has a Justin Reed and a Trent McDuffie. They need to get better on the back seven. And then I think the third thing is at those crunch moments versus a Lamar, a Joe, a Patrick Mahomes, they got to get more multiple schematically on defense. If you think about the end of the game, Buffalo saw a Star Wars pressure from Kansas City, advantage Kansas City. Kansas City gets the line of scrimmage on 3rd and 9, and they say single high safety in the middle of the field, man coverage. That's hard to do unless you got the guys that are unbelievable lockdown on the outside.
The Bills allowed 29 points per game to teams that made the playoffs this season. So against a good competition, you saw them break down a little bit.